Buildings and Grounds and Committee to order. I am sitting in. Chairman Diamond is not able to make it. Vice Chairman Beatty has deferred that I take over because he just stepped in from another appointment, and I will turn it over to Superintendent Kevin Joe. Let's approve minutes first, though. Motion to approve minutes from the last meeting. Supervisor Frazier, Supervisor McDivitt. So, all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Superintendent Joe.
Thank you. There are no action or agenda items this month. I don't believe we do have some referrals on the back, and I'll jump into the referrals real quick. Last month the committee tabled, actually I don't necessarily know it was last month. Last month the county attorney was asked to email the contract with D&G Recycling out to committee members. I'm actually going to defer to Mary and let her discuss it because I know she was renewing or redoing the lease agreement.
Or revising it?
Yes.
Okay.
Or revising.
Chairman Diamond had asked me to revise the lease agreement and give him a copy, which I've done, and I don't know what he wants to do with it after that.
Okay.
Mary,
So
can you
that
speak
is
up,
my-
because we can't hear you.
Sure. Do you want me to say that again?
Yeah, I couldn't hear you. What you said.
Sounds like my
kitchen.
Supervisor Diamond asked me to revise the D&G lease and provide it to him, which I've done. I don't know what he wants to do with it now that he has it.
Thank you.
The next referral was the county treasurer was determined if money from the environmental testing reserve could be used for asbestos abatement for the former jail building. And again, I'll defer to Mary. I believe there was an update that money cannot be used for abatement efforts.
Correct. We talked about at the last meeting that money can only be used for property taken in the foreclosure action and property that we get a temporary incidence of ownership on. So I don't know if we can remove that from pending items.
Thank you, Mary. Joe.
And the last thing I have is I've just provided a court update. Frank's not here, so I'll provide the update. As of Friday this week, Family Court will be ready to move into their new facility. As of Monday morning, they will be in the new facility. I think most of their furniture, files and such have already been put over there. They're actually working off of tables in their existing area now. But I think over this weekend, everything will be completed. All the access controls will be put in place, and they'll be ready to go Monday morning over there. At this point, the contractor will start to work into phase 2 of the project. Phase 2 is within the existing facility, and to work through the existing family court facility. They'll start in the probation area first, and then they'll move over to the family court area. The probation area, there's a couple offices that are being taken. So the first thing we'll have to do is move 2 probationary officers to the temporary court facility that we built last year, in some of the offices in there. And they expect, which is probably almost 6 months to 8 months ahead of time, that the phase 2 will be completed by October this year.
Thank you.
I think a number of us have done a tour. It looks like they're doing a first-class job. The contractor appears to be on top of it and seems to be moving along.
They're doing a great job. And actually, one more thing to add on is the parking lot out front will be done next week. So I think Frank Morehouse will be back tomorrow. He'll meet with the contractor as well as the project manager to determine when everybody needs to be out of the parking lot out front, but it'll probably be just a day's worth of work, maybe 2 days at the most. They're going to mill that parking lot and then pave the entire front parking lot.
Good. Supervisor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The courthouse is being built and it's going to be open. There was discussion about building the courthouse a year ago, 2 years ago, and it costs a lot of money. But I think it's, you explained that to us, Kevin, but I think it's important to get on the record that that's being built to the Office of Court Administration specifications. It wasn't a design that the Legislative Committee or the Criminal Justice Committee came up with. So even though it cost a lot of money, it wasn't, we really didn't have anything to say about that. It's to standardize the specifications for the courthouses.
Supervisor Beatty?
Well, I'm not sure that's all that accurate. We were required by law to add 5,100 feet for a new family court judge. There were some existing pieces of our old courthouse that needed updating, or according to the legislator. But I think we went up and above board in giving a very elaborate courthouse. $21 million later, which is all county money, 16, and it was bonded out to make 21 million. I always felt that, well, there's a number of questions. We don't have to rehash history, but whether we needed another family court judge was I always thought rather dubious, seeing that Washington County, which has fewer residents but has almost twice the caseload. I never could figure that one out, but maybe I just look at numbers and I just don't figure that out. Saratoga County has 4 times as many people as Warren County. They have 2 family court judges, so I don't know. But anyway, we are where we are. They've done a great job, so I can agree to that, and we'll move forward.
Maybe we can encourage people to behave.
I'm all for that.
Last thing I want to add is over the next couple days, and even when family court gets in there, if anybody would still like a tour of the facility, I'd be more than happy to take you through.
Good. Thank you. Is that all for facilities? Okay, then let's move on to airport.
I think the first thing that we're going to go through is a grant application. It's a new resolution request for a grant application. It's actually to amend the grant application from last year. As you all are well aware, we had a public hearing last year. Actually, I think it's been the second public hearing for the Runway 119 extension. From that public hearing, there was some discussions, and not just last year, the previous one as well, about the Marl Fen that exists on the airport grounds and how this project would impact that Marl Fen. There's been meetings, numerous meetings, and I wasn't part of most of them, but I've read a lot of the minutes, with DEC, APA, Army Corps, EPA, as well as the FAA, regarding doing a hydraulic study, or hydrology study, groundwater hydrology study, and seeing how that would impact the Marl Fen, if this extension would impact that Marl Fen. Based on that, and the comments that came back from the public hearing, the cost has now increased for this project, for the design aspect of this project. You had approved last year and a resolution to do the design application, grant application for $985,000, and as of now, and you can see on the back on page 2 that the new design grant application is at $1.56 million. And again, the majority of this effort is from the hydrology study that will be conducted for this project. Another cost associated with this is FAA had a conference call last week with myself and CNS, and we've decided that another 30-day comment period would be a good idea on the EA that they're reviewing right now. So starting May 5th, we'll have another comment, and it won't be a public hearing, it's a public comment period, and it'll be for 30 days. It'll last till June 5th for anybody else to get any comments in on the EA before the FAA makes any type of decision on the EA.
So we're looking for a motion to bring this to the floor for amending resolution 223 of 2017.
We have discussion, or?
And then we'll have discussion, yes. Moved by Supervisor Loeb, seconded by Supervisor McDivitt. Discussion.
Yeah, just a couple questions for for Kevin, please, and then I just want to do a refresher course. At the last public meeting, there's 150 people that attended. 28 people got to the microphone and spoke out during that open public session. 22 were against the extension. They range from pilots to engineers to business leaders to housewives to house husbands to teachers. So it was a pretty overwhelming amount of people that were against the extension that was held at the last public open session. There were 6 people that were for it. They were all pilots. But there were actually some pilots who were against it, so I found that kind of ironic. But a couple questions for Kevin is, number one is, the FAA is requesting this hydrology study. Is that correct?
The FAA is requesting the hydrology study, and it's through discussions and some of the meetings that I didn't partake in, that DEC, APA, EPA, and the Army Corps would also like this done.
Okay. And would you probably conclude that they want that probably from some of the fact that of that open session that public session that we had, that so many people, in fact there's environmental lawyers discussing their concern with the Morro Fen, that probably resulted in those agencies saying, hey, it makes sense, let's do a hydrology study?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. And so the additional cost, which is still our share is 5% of that 100%, correct? Okay, is really a result of, and I'm glad to see it, of the FAA saying, hey, we're actually going to listen to the people and all those other agencies, and we're going to do this additional study on the Morro Fen, because that could be a deal killer or not. Okay, I just want to make sure we're clear on that, okay? And so you're asking now for an extension, a grant extension to file the...
This is an amendment to the grant that was proposed last year. And this is due, and I probably should have added this in, this is due by June 15th of this year. With them doing that 30-day comment period, they'll wrap up all those comments, or they'll have all the comments by June 5th. They'll address those comments and have that in as part of the EA for FAA to make their decision. This has to be in though by June 15th, and they were hoping to wrap up most of the comment period and everything by then as well at the same time.
And so, Kevin, if this committee decided not to grant the application extension, what would occur? Amendments.
And I'm not, that's something I have to look in with FAA. I'm not sure that they grant an extension or not on it. My assumption is they may, but I can't be 100% sure.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And, yes, Supervisor
Mr.
Wild.
Chairman, a couple of comments. Kevin, you and I spoke about this, but the scope change, right? Part of it is hydrology. I'm reading this. Part is not. What are the scope changes that are beyond the hydrology study? And what I'm getting at, just for the rest of the board members, I was a consultant. If there's something that the consultants didn't do correctly that we anticipated they should have done correctly, and it's a redo of work, we shouldn't be paying for that. They should be paying for it. So what's the additional scope?
So first of all, I would agree with you that if they didn't do something, they should be paying for it. This additional scope as part of this is, I can tell you the majority of this is for the hydrology study. There's a small portion that's associated with this further 30-day public comment period. That it's a significant task. As Supervisor Beatty said, there was a significant number of people who didn't get the chance to be able to comment during the public hearing. I think overall, though, I think there was more than 200 comments received, and each one of those comments have to be addressed as part of the EA. And that's a big part. That's a task that some of this money is associated with.
Okay, now if I could just follow up. I did have questions about the semantics here, that there's a 30-day public comment period for the draft final EA. What the heck is a draft final EA? Is that the first version, or is it
This is the final.
post-hydrology?
This is the draft final EA. That's this. There will be no more beyond this. So accept these public comments, and then once these comments are made part of the record into the EA, FAA will come back and make a decision, whether it's a FONSI or whether it's not a FONSI, and that's a finding of no significant impact. I don't know, I can't predict that.
Okay, so this is prior to the hydrology study being completed?
Yes.
So after the hydrology study, will there be additional public comment?
There will be additional public comments, because at that point, if we get to that hydraulic study, which would be during design, then it'll be part of the secret process in the EIS, so there will be another public hearing.
So there'll be opportunities
Yep,
for the
there will.
public to weigh in and whatever.
Yep.
Okay, fine, thank you.
Okay. So, question before us here is improving an amendment to a resolution that would increase the grant application by $581,000, which increases the county share by another $29,050. This is for a grant that would be submitted by June?
By June 15th.
By June 15th and awarded in the fall of 2018. This is for doing the final design of the airport extension. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
One opposition. Motion carries.
Continue. Nothing under referral or pending items for the airport. The next item would be they haven't been reviewed yet, but the airport FBO RFPs were received. And I can't tell you any more than that they have been received. Lastly, as you all recall from the last facilities or airport meeting, we had violations that were to be corrected. That FAA there were minor violations for most of them, but FAA needed to have them corrected. I had told Supervisor Beatty that I would respond to FAA, and they did grant me an extension for the dates that I had asked for.
Thank you.
One of the items that they had fined us, or not necessarily fined us on, but penalized us on, was the training of the existing employees out there. As most of you know, we took DPW employees and put them out at the airport. Ross had given them a very quick training, probably not enough that they needed to be out there working at the airport. They have since gone to the ASOS, which is the Airport Safety Operations School, out in Buffalo, and next month they are headed to the Airport Rescue and Firefighting School in Rochester. So they will be up to date, and that was also based on the dates that I had given the FAA. The one item that I had asked from the FAA to correct, which would have been by July 31st, was the construction of the signage and striping out of the existing airport. That will not occur by July 31st. We just got word from the contractor that they will not be able to start that project until August 1st, but they will be wrapped up by the 31st of August. So I will go back to FAA and ask them for an extension, at least on that portion of those violations, till August 31st.
So that will, I'm sorry.
Go right ahead.
So that will now be in compliance with all the FAA, because I know Rich Ayers, they did their piece. There was a couple of violations,
They did theirs.
and they took care of theirs right away. And so we'll be clean and green, other than that asking for the extension.
That's correct. So
Signage.
by August, everything else will be wrapped up by May 31st. By August 31st of this year, that would be the last piece, which would be the work, the construction work going out for the signage and striping out there.
Nate, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Supervisor Loeb, you handed out something. Did you want to go over?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This, what I've handed out, did everyone get a copy of what at the last meeting, Chairman Diamond asked me to provide, as I wrote, this is self-explanatory, an official but non-professional update on the airport master plan. The airport master plan was started around 2001, and updates were added up to 2009, but not necessarily was everything updated in 2009. And I say around because it's an odd, peculiar aspect of the study that, and also FAA memos, that they don't put dates on them. I like to see things dated. You're going to send a letter. When did was that letter written? My purpose was to give us, the decision makers, a better information in making decisions with regard to this airport development and the airport runway extension. I say at the bottom of the first page, I make no attempt to evaluate or forecast economic benefits to the airport. I just want to address some aspects of the safety. I would request that you keep this in your file with your airport because it is hard information and it will aid you in your decision process. Now, I will point out one thing. Our runway is 5,000 feet long. There are two ways of, there are two important parts in flying. When you're in the air, going straight and level, you can basically go out for a cup of coffee. I remember when I was flying, I asked my, here, just hold the yoke. I've got to look at the map. She says, oh, are you kidding me? Then nothing's going to happen. It'll be all right. But when you're landing and taking off, that could be problematic. For landing, there's ample room for it. It was projected when they started the study that while they had one jet in 2001, that we would have 5 jets by 2020. Well, we had 5 jets last year, and they expect to have 2, maybe 3 more within a couple of years. We had no jet hangars, and now we have 4 jet hangars, and they're in the planning process, according to Steve Abbott, of building 2 more. So the presence of jet aircraft in Warren County is solid, and it is growing. There's ample room in the 5,000-foot runway for any of those jets to land safely, even in inclement weather. However, the taking off portion is a different story. And there's a term called
Balanced field length.
variable balance field length. Thank you very much. When an aircraft reaches takeoff speed and they decide they have to stop, they hit the brakes, but it requires a certain amount of runway for that to occur safely. And the numbers here, based on average load and weather, show that of the 5 jets that are there, 3 of them actually require longer than 5,000-foot runway, and that's on average weather and payload. In times of August, high humidity and temperature, wet runways, you're going to require a longer runway. And I will point out that we have a lot of jet business during the July and August months, which are times of wet runways and high humidity. And as an anecdotal observation, I noted on the back yesterday at the EDC meeting, Chairman Henke was here, and Chairman Conover is here. There was debate about the industrial properties that are contiguous to Washington County, and somebody quipped, I think it was you, as chairman of that committee, that we are not going to annex the Washington County property. And Chairman Henke turned back and said to Chairman Conover, I'll trade you that land for the airport. So if we don't want the airport, believe me, Washington County will take it as separate things. But I just want to keep this as a reference because it has some good information. Thank you.
If I may ask one follow-up question. Thank you, Supervisor Loeb, for pulling this together. This is handy to have for our permanent file. Of the 5 jets that you have listed here and their field balance length, are any of these based, or are these the ones that are based at the airport?
These are the ones that are based.
These are the ones that are based. Okay, thank you.
The 3 that are courting or thinking about coming, I wasn't able to get any information on, but I would expect that they're a similar configuration to the average jet that's based here, as far as requirements.
Supervisor Beatty.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Lopez, for putting this together for us. I think it's going to be very helpful. Just a note, the FAA determined that we had one of the safest airports in the state. You could always be safer, I guess. I quipped one time, why don't we make the runway all the way down to the middle of Glens Falls? Would that make it safer? Let's add about 2 miles to it. So, you know, you can always, if you ask most pilots, they're always going to say, yeah, give me more runway, I'd love that. But the reality of it is we have one of the safest airports in the state of New York according to the FAA now, so.
That's a good record to have.
Yeah, and Mr. Hankey, when he said, I'll trade you that land for the airport, I don't blame him. I've walked that land, and you've got mostly swampland, you've got, so it almost reminds me of the guy trying to sell us the Brooklyn Bridge. That land is close to useless, but we do try to sell it and try to get people to, you know, put a building up there and so forth, and we should never stop trying, but I can see where Mr. Hankey would want to get rid of that land. I would too if I was him. So, that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you. In relation to these base jets and to the study, there was some talk about whether what jets do use this airport. Can I be reminded on what that original study was based on? There was different classes of jets. So, Steve, would you have any knowledge of that, or Kevin, would you?
I don't. I'm going to defer to Steve.
Yeah, there's a specific classification of jets that they use in the original study, and I have to look into that, exactly what that is. But they did determine this particular class of aircraft was what they're basing their runway extension preliminary information on them. But as far as the matrix and stuff like that, as Supervisor Logan pointed out, you know, there are some, each individual aircraft has its own matrix, if you will, determining runway length and stuff like that. So you have to either pull from the data sheet from the aircraft specifically, or then generalize the type of aircraft you're looking at. So, but I can look at information on that.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you.
I recall, Steve, you reading in the report, it wasn't necessarily specific aircraft, it was a family class of
Right.
aircraft.
Yes.
Right.
Correct. Yes, yes. Supervisor Loeb and then Supervisor Wild.
To that point, that is true.
Oh, were you in there? Okay, sorry, we'll work our way down the line. Did Bill jump in front of you?
That's all right,
Sorry
because
for
I'm
that.
more important. I got less hair.
Keep it short.
Wait a second, I should be going next.
Oh,
The FAA sent a letter out in August of 2013, which states that we now recommend using manufacturers' airport planning manuals to determine basic runway length for airplanes and jets, as opposed to using these families. So every airplane and jet is going to, in their specs, is going to say this is what this airplane needs. Thus, the numbers that I gave you there, as opposed to the family.
that's what that means. Thank you. Thank you. Supervisor Stroud.
I just remember what the supervisor from, I was the administrator, I believe, from Genesee County who was in.
Yes.
And after they went to the longer runway, just in fuel cells alone, they started bringing millions of dollars in additional revenue just because of the extended runway. But you take, for example, the Gulfstream 650, which is one of the most popular jets out there now. With the full load, people keep on saying about the jets that can use the airport. Yes, they can, but are they getting maximum utility out of it? And the answer is no. So get back to the Gulfstream 650. With a full load at standard temperature and pressure, that needs 5,850 feet. Yeah, there's a margin of error built in there, as there should be. But it just gives you an indicator that 6,000 foot is the new standard. Hundreds, if not thousands of airports around the world are going to the new standard to accommodate business jets. Now, if you want to open up the economic doors of the future, this is the way we've got to go. So I'm agreeing with Bill and the other pro-airport runway supporters. But
Supervisor
and I
Wild
can
and
go on
Supervisor
on.
Garrity.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is for Rich Air. You guys are building some additional jet hangars. Is the current airport length a factor in your marketing of those hangars?
It is a marketing tool that we have indicated to potential clients. It doesn't say that it's the final determining factor as to whether or not you're going to be based here. They take into a number of factors, and that would be one of them to do.
So if I might follow up, Mr. Chairman, the jets that you suspect may be taking advantage of these hangars, are they what I would refer to as like the net jets, where it's owned by a community of owners, and it's just where they store that airport, where they would store that jet when it's not used? Is that kind of what the plan is now?
Well, I think where you're leading towards is basically who's going to be using the hangar. Is it a private owner or is it a charter company? And if you're looking at a private owner, they're not so dictated by, and not weigh so much the runway length versus a charter company. They would consider the runway length as being heavy weighted because they dictate, they fly under a different set of rules. They're under a 135 regulation versus a Part 91 regulation. And by those means alone, will determine what their purpose is, to whether to be based here at the airport or not. Yes, we have a transient hangar planned. We also have private hangars that are planned too. So it really depends on the client you're looking at and what their function is. And right now, we obviously have both that come into the airport. But each client is different, and each client does require a different set of guidelines that they're hammering out to see what's best for them.
Thank you. Supervisor Garrity?
Yeah. Where do we stand on hiring a new airport manager?
That was next on my list. I've received 8 applicants. I put it out on the national website for airport employment. We received, again, 8. 2 of them were local, and I say local within New York. Everybody else was Colorado, Kansas City, Missouri. And I've narrowed it down to 5 of the 8. I want to say probably 3 of them were more geared towards hospitality and restaurant and hotels. And I'm starting interviews this week.
Another question. On the RFP, can anybody enlighten us on where we are on the RFP? What work's gone into it? Have they had a meeting? Anybody?
I'll answer. We received the RFPs, and that's it at this point. I think Jack was going to set up a meeting with the negotiating team to go through the RFP.
That's correct. We're getting together to go over preliminary, and then, meeting, and that's going to happen probably, I think, within 7 to 10 days. And then we're going to have a meeting with the applicants,
Prospective
right,
negotiators.
and on a neutral site, and go from there.
Yeah. Supervisor Bramer? Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay.
Kevin, when you're talking about the airport manager, that you're doing the interviews, and there's people with hospitality experience, I'm looking for someone that would help us manage the contract and maybe cover some of the FAA regulations for the county, but also do other kinds of grant work. Are any of the applicants, first of all, are any of them have FAA knowledge? I assume if they apply for that job, they have more than just hospitality.
5 of the 8 did, and when I say hospitality, they worked for the last 25 years in the hotel business. They don't have any FAA. I mean, there are some applicants that I received that just not applicants that I was going to look at to run our airport. I mean, to have 25 years of restaurant or hotel, I don't think that fits for our airport.
Any with grant kind of experience?
Quite a few of them. So probably the 5 I picked have worked doing grant administration, grant writing, as well as managing airports and managing FBOs as well.
Supervisor Wild?
Thank you. And I have 2 questions, but the first one is just a follow-up to what Supervisor Bramer asked. If you could just elaborate on what your key features or skill set, I should say, of an airport manager for us is.
And I'll tell you what it is, because it was based on what we put as the job description. I'm looking for somebody to be able to, as Supervisor Bramer just said, I'm looking for somebody to be able to write grants. I'm looking for somebody to be able to manage the grants that we have. One of the things that I would think about doing differently with this airport manager is a lot of the times we use the consultants to do our reimbursements for a lot of the federal or FAA type of projects. We don't, at DPW, at least for the federal highway projects, we do all those reimbursements in-house. I don't necessarily think that we need a consultant to do that work. Although, with that being said, I don't know necessarily that an airport manager can handle this by himself without having some type of clerical staff or lesser, say, engineering tech to be able to assist them with that. But I want them to be able to manage the airport. I want them to be able to manage contracts that we have out of the airport, including whether or not we go with an FBO contract, and to be able to write grants and administer those grants.
Go ahead. Just a couple of more follow-ups. What about marketing skills?
That was part of the plan as well. Is to be able to market our airport. I don't know necessarily I was specific in the job description, but it did request that somebody had a marketing or business administration type of background as well.
Thanks, Kevin. And my next question is, Mr. Chairman, maybe you can help me guide this question and the format for it or the place for it. But I read the RFP and the response to the RFPs, and I have some questions about the decision-making process and how we go about that. And I'm not sure if that needs to be executive session or whether it can be just something that you feel comfortable with me just
My first thought is take that up with Chairman Diamond on it, and perhaps with the negotiating committee that he has put. Is there any other recommendation where Supervisor Wild could go?
I think that's the proper course.
Okay. Yes.
I just have a couple comments.
Supervisor
Just a FYI, I know the jets that take off from the airport often have to go with 60% fuel load. I kind of chuckle though a little bit because one of them went to Stuttgart, Germany last year without stopping, and they routinely go from Warren County to Napa Valley and out to California. So, you know, the length of the runway, although they have to leave with 60% sometimes, they're still able to go to many places around the world, even with that. The other point I was going to make was when I asked Mr. Skimmerhorn last year, point blank, if the runway doesn't go through, is that a deal stopper for you on with the FBO and all these other things? And he said, no. So, you know, when he says no, I got to take him for his word. Now, he said, would I like it? Sure, I'd like it. If you're willing to extend the runway, I'll take it. But is that a deal stopper? No, was his answer.
Thank you, Supervisor Straub.
His answer was, when I asked him about the runway length, if adding the 1,000 feet would provide benefits, he replied, yes, many benefits. Just to keep the...
Well, and his answer again on film was exactly, and I'll pull it up for you, Supervisor Straub, because you like video a lot, was no.
Okay. One thing that came to mind here, if we do increase fuel sales from the airport in Queensbury, how does that fit into the Clean Energy Communities plan?
Well, my thinking was that we're looking at a 5-year economic plan or budget plan that doesn't look so great. Why don't we do the things that bring in additional revenues, like extending the runway, which will bring in fuel business and new business?
Well, that's not proven, but that's fine.
No, it just happens in every other airport that I went to.
No, that's not proven either.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, nice try though, John.
Anything else you'd like to
That's a nice
add at
try.
this point?
County guy was
Okay,
fine.
no other business before the committee at this time. Motion to adjourn by Supervisor Simpson, seconded by Supervisor McKibben. Oh,
We should do a floor speech.
yeah, sorry, before we take votes, yes.
That's okay, I just wanted to make a correction for the public record.
long as
This
it's
is for
sure.
Anchor.
I'm all for that.
Quiet, please.
Hey,
Quiet.
that's all, I just want to make a public comment. for
Okay.
Public record that this position before,
And this is on Supervisor Loeb's report?
A professional brief on the airport master plan. This is the first page bottom there, just correctly that hangars being developed.
One more.
2 are actually under construction, 2 more are still seeking final approval. and that's all.
Thanks, Steve. Okay.
On that,
All those in
maybe
favor?
half of the fuel.
Aye. Opposed? None.